So here we are in episode 7, and in this session, I'm going to talk about my journey and continuing with my story on really from sort of near bankruptcy to growth, business growth, and how putting a bow tie on a llama really did transform my business. And I'm going to talk about the highlights, and lows of running my business and the moment I realized things needed to change. And I'm hoping that some of you may resonate, or what I'm talking about will resonate with you if you have ever experienced anything similar. And I'll also talk about how struggling to pay a VAT bill made me really realize that things had to change. And uh, there was this one article which has been the most fundamental article I have ever read, and I really do read an awful lot of business books, and it so resonated with me at the time. So I'm going to talk about that. So the story starts back in 2014, and I had been open for about 18 months. We'd had some fantastic highlights. I'd transformed this derelict farm and opened up a business. And at times you couldn't fit everybody through the doors as the farm was so popular, especially in the summer months. I even had organised an event called With Open Farm Sunday. And I had so many people wanting to come to the farm that I had to cancel the event because literally thousands kind of told me they were coming. And even if 10% of those had come, we just wouldn't have been able to fit them in. We'd won some national and regional awards, and at the time in 2014, I just delivered my first wedding at the farm. Now, these are all positives, but like any entrepreneur, or business owner, you have more than your share of downturns or negative elements. I had gone through this very difficult tribunal process to do with business rates, and that had just taken so much out of me to challenge this unfairness of business rates for new rural diversifications. The story of this actually ended up being presented in a national conference and also being taken up by the National Farmers Union, the NFU, as an example of kind of, you know, the bureaucracy and stupidity of what they make you go through as a new business, and for farming in particular. I'd also had to deal with a court case. I'd been to court over a website of all things. And at times, the farm was empty with zero bookings, and I had huge overheads to pay for. And a particular low point was in December 14, which was a real shock for me because, hospitality businesses in December traditionally massively is your best time. But for me, I had no bookings and I was absolutely desperate. I had just been diagnosed with pre-diabetes, and I'll be honest with you, I was more stressed than I'd ever been in my life. And I'm going to be honest that there was an uncertain future for the farm, and I never really told anybody how bad it was. Um, it was awful, an awful, awful time. And I had to think and reflect and just take some time out and think what on earth had gone wrong. And certainly during the first 18 months of trading, I'd made an awful lot of mistakes and judgments about people who'd let me down. I've got to be honest, I'm quite naive. I trust people too much. I think everybody's in it to help me. And really, when you come into business, I'm sad to say, but you just can't be like this. I've had two web developers who've just taken me for a complete ride, a complete idiot, and over a website. I'd had this company who tried to trick me into paying thousands to sort my business rates out. I had a bookkeeper who got me into such a complete financial mess. And this stream of people who'd kind of seized upon my vulnerability and stress, and I've got to be honest, really tried to take advantage of me. My mum at the time had she wasn't well. I just think that there's been a lot of emotional, and although she has been this massive, massive tower of emotional and practical support for me, and when she she's not there, or when she's, you know, not as present, and then you suddenly realize how much you rely on partners and your mum and your family and what have you. It makes you realize that actually you've got to do something to change that. And at this time, I personally had got this blood test result which told me I was becoming diabetic. I was the heaviest and unhealthiest I'd ever been in my life. And the massive cause of this was stress. And I've got to be honest, some of this puts a strain on your relationships. Although Stephen and I have always been very solid, you know, I was a complete workaholic. I didn't stop. I was always in my, when I did stop, I was talking about the farm all the time. The business and the stress of the Wellbeing Farm was putting pressure on us. And I also was beginning to feel that I wasn't being the mum that I wanted to be for Matthew. That's the honest part of it. I just really felt that things had to change. At the time, I was doing all these 14 different things from the farm, and there's, you know, from sort of school visits to to children's parties to weddings. There was just no way that I could properly market all these things. I had all these staff employed, and at one point, I did wonder how on earth I was actually going to pay them. And during the spring of 2014, this couple, Polly and Ryan, I remember them coming to the farm, just popped up one day and about the possibility of us being able to run weddings from the farm. And obviously, in my usual style of just not of kind of going, yes, yes, yeah, we'll do that, yeah, we'll do that. 14 things. Let's add another few things to it. I'd said yes, of course, but kind of not even sure where they'd actually have their wedding. And at the time, I had this kind of huge barn, which was an indoor horse arena. And I just said, we can put your wedding in the horse arena. Now, when I look back, how on earth could I have done that? I, you know, we'd spent so much money transforming the main buildings, these corporate facilities, lovely kitchens, cookery school, and everything. But at the end, but at the other end of the farm, it was still a horse arena, and I just didn't know what to do. So I contacted a local marquee company and asked them if they could put a marquee inside the horse arena. I Somebody came along and promoted a wedding fair for us, and that was it. And the interest went crazy. Everybody wanted to get married in this barn, which was completely neglected. So here I was. I'd spent all this money on one end of the farm, which people didn't really want, but the other end, everyone wanted. And so I had to be able to start this work of transforming the horse arena. And my brother Harry, who I owe so much to him for what he did. You know, he's a designer, and I just said to him, I'm in a real mess, and I've got to transform this barn into a wedding venue. And despite him not being a carpenter, you know, as I said, he's actually a designer, but he was the person who spent his weekends, his breaks, his spare time coming up, traveling over from Preston, and did paneling the wood all round the barn. We sourced these military parachutes from eBay, which were about 30 meters in diameter, and they were massive. We had to hoist them up to the ceiling to hide this multitude of sins. And then the flooring was actually a sand arena, and we just rolled the sand and laid down carpet on the sand floor, and we were open as a wedding venue. And we ran two weddings in 2014. Polly and Ryan on the 5th of July 2014, and the next one was Nina and Paul on the 18th of October 2014. And Nina and Paul's wedding really did put us on the map, because Nina in particular was this wedding, was a wallpaper designer, very, very creative, and she just took the barn and made it look amazing. And oh, it was all over social media. She was a big Instagram, Pinterest, she had a lot of followers, and that massively transformed that moment of being able to do that. And but you know, we were in 2014, we'd had these two weddings, but I was in a real mess in my business. I really had struggled for 20 months, I've got to be honest. December 14, as I said, when there's a hospitality venue, I should have been at my peak time, and I received this VAT bill for £8,000 and just did not have the money to pay it. And it's a pivotal day of what happened in my business, which was the 11th of December 2014. And this day was almost, I suppose you could describe it as a collision of a number of things. Um, I had the value of a good mentor, which was Victor. I think I've talked about Victor previously, but and I think he came along thinking this would be a 6-week assignment, and he probably took on far more that he could ever cope with by taking me on, I'll be honest. I had just completed a neuro linguistic programming NLP course, and this gave me this whole new tranche of tools and reflection, thinking about my behaviour, the impact of my behaviour on others. And I don't know, on that particular day had been a real pivotal point in that learning and a massive realization. And I remember being incredibly emotional on that day. And also around that time, I'd been embarked on this program called the Lancashire Forum, which um, it was like a local authority funded initiative by EU funding in collaboration with Lancaster University. And I used to have and go and mix with this network support of entrepreneurs. And we'd learnt about the journey entrepreneurs go on and when things go wrong in your business and when you fail, that it's actually a positive thing, and that failure gives you an opportunity to review and reflect, and you learn about what caused you to fail, and you actually do become a stronger, wiser person. And up until that point, I'd never viewed failure as anything positive. In fact, I dreaded it. And to be honest, it's kind of I had been behaving like an ostrich with my head in the sand, and I had to have this realization that actually this business that I dreamt and created and nurtured was just not going to plan, and I had to change. And this is why this article is the best I ever read, because I don't know how, I'm a massive believer in the law of attraction, and things happen for a reason, things come to you for a reason. And I don't know and can't remember how on earth this article came to me, but it was the thing, you know, oh, it's made such a difference to me. And the article is called somebody called James Cox, and it's called "It's All in the Positioning: What to Do When Your Business Seems to Be Losing Focus." And it was dated the 26th of June 2014. And I'm going to read some of this out because it's just been massive resonation with me. If that's a resonation, if that's an actual article. And I think that the point, the first one is in this article, he said, "You spent months, if not years, thinking about the idea for your business. You've really honed it down and found your unique selling point. You slogged in the evenings and weekends researching the market. You've written a detailed business plan. You know exactly what services you're offering, your methodology, and how they reinforce your sphere of expertise. Then when your first whiff of an actual paying client comes along, you say yes, even though they've asked you to do something a little different outside your original plan. It's an irresistible temptation, especially if you're a creative thinker like most startups and small business leaders, and especially if you're focused on generating income, again, like we all are at this stage of business growth. Every time it happens, then the further out the window your carefully honed plan goes. Um, Suddenly, it's a year later, and you find that you've spread yourself too thin. Your original vision and the value you aim to provide are not focused on that special sweet spot you had identified at all. Instead, you are doing a whole host of things for your customer that you never intended or wanted to. Your margins are slipping and you're not enjoying it that much. After all, you can't be an expert in everything. You see your differentiator, based on your original position, slowly slipping away. It's all too easy to end up in this situation, as turning away income is incredibly hard for any business, but especially for startups to do. And it's only natural to act like an ostrich and ignore the fact that the business you've dreamed of creating isn't quite going to plan. Many business owners hit this point. If or when it happens, it's time for decisive action. If you don't address the problem, you risk turning your hard fought business into a generalist supplier. You risk losing pricing. You lose pricing power in the new business and client relationships. You'll be a doer rather than a thinker, a strategist, or an expert. If you find that you've lost your way a little in terms of positioning, you've three options. You may either make a step change, refocus on your original vision, become the best at it, and think about becoming an expert in one particular vertical market. You take a leap. Option two is to take a leap. You focus on a new service which you've discovered in running a business. It may not be your original vision, but you found clients need it, and you could be great at it with focus. Or number three, you pivot, realizing that this is not what you dreamed of, accept you're in the wrong business and get out. After all, you did this when you first started in business anyway. Find your mojo and do it again. You've got it into you. And this is exactly what happened to me. And this is why that story resonated so much. I had started off with a plan to focus on corporate events and lifestyle courses with a vision around stress. I got desperate for money and started doing anything I could to survive with very little thought about it. Ended up with 14 different things to keep going. And, met Victor, and I was all over the place in a complete mess. Um, and the point is, this months and months of planning about the research I did, visiting 195 venues, going around, getting really clear what I was about. Um, it just all fell apart. I was just I ended up in this completely unfocused mess. Opening a cafe, meant that the sort of specialness, the uniqueness of the farm was gone. I just became a venue that was serving bacon butties and pies, and that was never what I wanted to be, you know. And and it was at that point that I had to do one of those three things that um, James Cox talks about, and I took myself out. I got my head out the sand and I had to refocus. And I actually pressed the pause button on the 22nd of December 14 and took time away from a business over Christmas to work on it, not in it. And it was one of the most worthwhile things I've ever done because I kind of was re energized, I'd taken a break, and sometimes you have to do. I dug out my original business plan and almost I was really upset reading it because I realized how far I'd come and drifted from the original plan and to running this business that just really wasn't focusing on anything. So I was in December 14 facing this potential bankruptcy over this £8,000 VAT bill, wondering what on earth I could do. But there was a demand for weddings, clearly. And then this is the point, and this is what happened because I was really getting quite depressed about it all and thinking, crikey, I started off with stress in the NHS, and the stress here is even worse with running my business. I was starting to get depressed. I was really low. I couldn't stop crying. It was unbelievable. And this, the amazing thing was, I went to spend some time with my mum, and she was clearing out the cupboards, and she found this bag of bow ties left over from my dad, who was a concert pianist and an organist. And in sheer as a joke, I just said, you know what, I feel like putting a bow tie on a llama. And it was just that funny thing that she just gave me the bag of bow ties. I didn't have to think about how much they cost or the expense of the bow ties or anything like this because they were just there and there was different sizes, different shapes. Some were tied already, some were loose. Not that I'm ever going to kind of tie a loose bow tie on a llama, but I gave them to the llamas. They had the perfect necks, long and straight. They would suit a bow tie. And that pivotal moment when things began to change was the day that I put one of my dad's bow ties on a llama, and we left with two weddings in 2014 to 15 in 2015 and 43 in 2016, and the business stood out. It differentiated, it transformed, and everybody wanted to know about the bow tie wearing llamas. And that's why, this is the crazy idea. The putting a bow tie on a llama did transform my business. You know, we became this venue that stood out. We were a venue that differentiated itself amongst all the other competition. And yes, you can go and somebody can go and get llamas. It takes a long time to train a llama to get it to be able to mingle with you over a drink. And you know, it was a crazy idea at the time, but putting a bow tie on a llama literally did change my business overnight. And I think a real moral of this story is that whatever awful things happen to you in life, with the right attitude, something good will always come out of it. And that's food for thought for episode 7.